Hi and welcome to the Sentence Surgery, my new series of videos in which I take a badly written sentence and edit it in front of your very eyes to whip it into shape. And in this video, we're looking at bracketitis. But before we dive into that content, I just want to let you know that this is actually adapted from my flagship online writing course, Writing with Confidence, and you can enroll at a massive discount using the link below. So here we have a really long sentence. This one is 47 words, which is almost double my recommended maximum length for sentences in business writing, which is 24. And it's an incredibly dense sentence. It's got a lot of information packed into it. Let's give it a read. If the technology becomes economically viable, which is as of yet not guaranteed, it would likely result in savings for ordinary Japanese citizens and reduce Japan's dependence on foreign energy imports, also avoiding conflicts with China and other Asian energy importers with whom relations are already tense. I had to take a couple of breaths in there, which is always a sign that a piece of writing is overcomplicated. A sentence is overcomplicated, overlong, cramming too much into it. So, first thing we do with any sentence like this is to break it down into its constituent parts. You can always stitch it back together again, but just breaking it down into the individual points of information will give us a way into the sentence, give us a little bit of breathing room, let us see what's going on. So let's take the sentence and let's divide it up. So, first point, if the technology becomes economically viable. So, point 1 is about the viability of the technology. Point 2, that economic viability isn't guaranteed. So I would just separate that. Those 2 points are clearly connected, but I'm just separating them out at this point just to make it easier to see what's going on. Right, the rest of the sentence appears to deal with the consequences of viability. So there's clearly 2 halves to this sentence. So let's see what those consequences are. First of all, it would result in savings for ordinary Japanese citizens. So whenever you see an and, that's often a good place to stick a paragraph in, return in, when you're doing this kind of exercise. So point 1, savings. Point 2, Japan's dependence on foreign energy imports. And then we have this point in brackets about avoiding conflicts with Asian energy importers, other importers. So there's 5 separate bits of information. Let's now go back and see if we can stitch that back up in a way that's going to make it easier to read. So let's start with the first point, which is that the technology may become economically viable, but may not. So I would just simply sum that up in a single sentence as the technology may not become economically viable. That sums up the first part of the sentence. We've got rid of those brackets and just has said, you can see in the original that point took up nearly a line and a half. It's not going over a single line at the moment, so that's a nice short sentence. Let's look at the second half of the sentence, and this is where we have the consequences of economic viability. So let's start with the first one. So we're going to want to join the next sentence to that first sentence. So I would say, but if it does. And that's going to make the link between those 2 sentences. If it does, it would likely result in savings for ordinary Japanese citizens. I think we can say that, make that point about savings for ordinary Japanese citizens. I think we can say that in a punchier way. The way I would say it would be that it would save, that ordinary Japanese citizens would save money. So it's shorter, I also think it's more dynamic because we've actually made the Japanese citizens themselves the subject of the sentence. And I suppose here's one tip for more engaging dynamic writing, is the more you can make people the subject of your sentence, the more impact it will have, the more human and lively the sentence will feel. It will be just much easier for your reader to picture what's going on. Our next consequence is that it's going to reduce Japan's dependence on foreign energy imports. So let's add that. I think we can afford to add that into this second sentence. And reduce Japan's dependence on foreign energy imports. I have a bit of an allergic reaction to words like dependence. It's an abstract noun. And by that I mean it's a thing, but an abstract thing, a thing that you can't actually picture. You couldn't draw dependence, or if you tried to, if you got 10 people in a room and asked them to draw dependence, they'd all draw something different. So it's not easily picturable. I've just got this allergic reaction, as I say, to abstract nouns. So I would rather say that in a way that avoids the word dependence. So I think it would be just more dynamic, more readable if we say Japan would be less dependent. So using the adjective, the describing word that's related to dependence, but we're avoiding that abstract noun. In general, if you want to make your writing more dynamic, the less abstract you make it, the better. So I'm happy with that second sentence. I'd probably not add in this third point at this point. I would probably make that a separate sentence as well, this point about the other energy importers. So I would probably say Japan would also avoid conflicts with China and other Asian energy importers with whom relations are already tense. So we've gone from one sentence to three, and you may feel that maybe that's making the text longer. I don't know if it is overall, but what it's certainly doing is it's adding in little resting points. Those full stops are like little stepping stones, little resting points for your reader to absorb your point before moving on to the next one. When you try and cram a lot of ideas into a single sentence, it just puts a lot of cognitive load on your reader's brain. So giving them those resting points just allows them to digest the writing a little more easily. So what we've ended up with is where we had 47 words, we've now got 7 words, a nice short sentence. Next sentence is, what's this one? This is 20 words. So getting to the upper limit of our rule of thumb that we should keep them under 24 words. This one, final sentence, is 18. So those two sentences, second and third sentence, they're by no means short sentences, but they're well within grasp of most readers. One thing you will notice about this before and after version is the before version contains 2 sets of brackets, which is 2 sets of brackets too many. I would never say eliminate brackets from your writing toolbox, but you want to be really careful with brackets. I once coached an executive who'd repeatedly been told that his writing was dense, and I took a look at a page of his writing, and I went through this page with a yellow highlighter, and I marked every use of a bracket. And by the end of this process, the whole page was covered in yellow highlighter. Almost every sentence contained at least 1 set of brackets. I also rewrote the piece and did the same for my version, and of course it had no yellow highlighter pen all over it. So what this demonstrated to him in a really visual way was that he was cramming too many subsidiary ideas, too much information into each sentence. And it was just too much for the brains of his readers to hold on to. And that's how he discovered why everyone kept saying his work was dense. So if you want to avoid dense, difficult to read writing, try and avoid using too many brackets and instead think full stops, think little stepping stones rather than brackets, which can send your reader's brain in one direction before pulling them back, and it can all just generally be very confusing.